Imagine a nation spiraling into the abyss, its financial foundation crumbling under the weight of decades of reckless borrowing. The warning signs are flashing, but instead of addressing the issue, society turns a blind eye, embracing financial self-destruction. Welcome to the United States of America in 2025, a country in the throes of what I call the debt delirium.
It's not just about numbers on the balance sheet. It's a psychological and economic addiction that has gripped the government, businesses, and households alike. Like an addict in denial, we continue to feed our dependency, oblivious to the catastrophic withdrawal that awaits us. In this deep dive, we'll unpack what the debt delirium means, why it's a silent epidemic, and how we can break free before it's too late. And this is something worth talking about. All right, so I want to take a minute to share some thoughts in reference to the current debt binge that the world is on, and more importantly, the United States of America, and how it will impact you moving forward. Because based upon all the information coming out of DC, nothing at all is addressing the primary problem, which is the debt. And so if our currency is debt, the system is based upon debt, we live, breathe, and eat to accumulate more debt via our national currency, then what really are the options that we have of escaping this debt trap? And that, my friends, is a part of this debt delirium I want to talk about. But as always, if you guys want to hear more of these little deep dives, definitely hit that thumbs up button to show your support for the channel. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the current situation we're in and what your strategies are for trying to avoid some of the catastrophe that's unfolding. And also make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification so you're notified when these type of videos come out. First and foremost, what exactly is the debt delirium I'm talking about? It's a condition in which a society becomes so dependent on borrowing that it loses the ability to function without it. It's not just about government debt. It's about the entire culture built around the normalization of debt as a means of survival and prosperity. So picture this, a gambler who's already lost everything but keeps borrowing just to stay in the game. That's America at this current moment. We are no longer using debt strategically. We're using it compulsively with no plan to ever pay it back. And it all starts with the number one culprit behind this act, and that happens to be the government's unstoppable debt machine. You see, the United States of America right now is carrying a debt load that has ballooned to 36 trillion, which is a staggering figure that continues to grow at an alarming rate. So to put this into perspective, in 80, the national debt was just $930 billion, and we've added more debt in the last 3 years than in the first 200 years of existence. And it shouldn't be surprising that because of this debt, that the U.S. is now borrowing $1 million per second. Even the budget cuts, we're still adding trillions in debt annually. See, this is the debt delirium at its worst. The government can't function without borrowing, yet every dollar printed or borrowed makes future financial ruin even more certain. So instead of correcting the course that we're on, lawmakers kick the can down the road, leaving future generations to deal with the consequences. So a good example will be to imagine a homeowner who keeps taking out credit cards to pay off old ones, so eventually no lender will extend credit again, and bankruptcy becomes inevitable. So the U.S. is the homeowner, except the globally economies that will eventually cut us off. And the government and its debt load wasn't bad enough, the household debt crisis has also gotten out of hand. See, it's just not government, it's households that are drowning in debt as well. The total household debt in the U.S. has surpassed 18 trillion and is still growing. And so here's an interesting fact worth noting, that credit card debt has hit over 1 trillion with average interest rates exceeding 20%. So student loan debt exceeds 1.7 trillion, keeping an entire generation financially shackled. And then you have mortgage debt, which is also skyrocketing, with Americans paying more for homes than ever before due to inflated prices and interest rate hikes. And so ultimately this debt delirium makes it seem like a necessity rather than a tool. People borrow not because they want to, but because they must. Wages have stagnated, yet the cost of living continues to rise, forcing families to rely on credit just to survive. Just consider the fact that a family of 4 earning $75,000 a year but carrying $50,000 in credit card debt at a 22% interest rate is stuck in financial quicksand, better known also as the debt trap. Even if they make minimum payments, they will pay back double or triple the original amount of money they borrowed before ever getting out of the debt. And so if the government and households wasn't bad, then you factor in businesses are underwater with all types of debt as well. So we got the business debt bubble worth talking about. Right now, corporations aren't immune to the debt delirium either. See, over the past decade, corporate debt has exploded to more than 12 trillion, so the Federal Reserve near zero interest rates encourage reckless borrowing, but as rates rise, businesses are struggling to service their own debt. So it should be no surprise that nearly 20% of all U.S. companies are considered zombie companies at this current moment, meaning that they don't earn enough to cover the interest on their debt. So major companies are laying off workers in waves, not because they're unprofitable, but because they can't afford the rising debt payments. And then you hear a lot of people talking about the real estate industry and how the commercial real estate market is also in a debt crisis. And so they got vacancy rates that are hitting record highs, leaving landlords drowning in debt without tenants to generate revenue. And so think about this for an example. You got a business that borrowed millions to expand when money was cheap. And now that the interest rates have doubled, their debt payments have also skyrocketed, forcing them to cut costs, lay off employees, and in some cases declare bankruptcy. And that, my friends, are just 3 ways that the debt delirium trap has ensnared the government, households, and businesses with no end in sight. And so the question people should be concerned with is, how do we escape this financial debt spiral? And if it was possible, the only way to do it would be to adopt a debt detox strategy at every level. First, you have to have government reform. So that means enforcing spending caps and balancing the budget if it was possible. But if families can't spend more than they earn, why should the government? And then you need monetary literacy, which in my opinion comes before financial literacy. So monetary literacy is the actual individual themselves realizing that their currency has been the reason why the world is the way that it is, because it's a debt-based instrument. And once you realize that your money is not really yours, it's instruments used between a central bank and the government, and you caught up in the middle just for the sake of taxation, then you'll realize that you need to hold something other than just digital dollars or euros or whatever currency you might be using, and actually have something tangible and real that's yours. And in my opinion, it's always best if it has something to actually make some sounds behind it, i.e. sound money. And also on a practical side of things, you have financial literacy, which schools, if they really cared, should teach students about debt traps, credit management, and long-term financial planning. And then you have to install debt reduction plan. Households should prioritize paying down high interest debt and avoiding lifestyle inflation and building emergency savings. And then on the private sector, you need corporate accountability, which businesses need to borrow responsibly and reinvest profits wisely instead of using debt-fueled stock buybacks to inflate share prices artificially. And so ultimately speaking, even though this debt delirium is not going anywhere anytime soon, there is no viable solution to it. And so the house of cards must come crumbling down. But in the meantime, those who are paying attention got to realize that it's up to you and not any politician just making big promises on how they're going to bring back the American dream or make America great again, for that matter. And so the debt delirium is a ticking time bomb. And if we don't confront this addiction, we will face a financial collapse that makes 2008 crisis look like a minor hiccup when we look back in history books. And so the road to recovery won't be easy, but it's necessary. Along this path will come pain. And even though we can't prevent this pain, you can minimize the blow that you take personally and your household. And that's where it becomes crucial to continue to get monetary literacy and to keep your eyes and ears open as the things unfold around you, and then look for opportunities within the cracks of the seams that the big money players are flowing into. And it all starts with actually having tangible assets that you can afford to hold for long periods of time. So therefore, you need a little bit of cash for liquidity's sake in order to buy up these assets as things in the market become unaffordable for some to maintain, but yet cheap for others to buy up. But at the end of the day, the goal is to just keep you in tune as to what's going on, show you the chart so you can see for yourself the reality that we will face, and hopefully encourage you to continue to do what you've been doing all along, which is getting your weight up for those that's been a part of the community for any length of time. After discussing all these problems we're up against, without also steering you and pointing you in the direction of which I think is the most reasonable way to preserve and protect everything you work so hard for. And now that gold is above $3,000 per ounce, it's good to say that there's no ceiling as to how high it's going to go, because there's no floor to how low the Federal Reserve note is going to go when measured against 1 ounce of gold. And over the last year, one Federal Reserve note is down 28.61% when measured in the relative purchasing power that this note would have had a year prior. And so that means there's no reason why you can't afford to have 24 karat gold in your possession, i.e. the gold back, of which they have a large assortment of different weights to fit any budget. And as the recording this video right here, the one denomination gold back at this current moment is only going for $6 for 1/1000th of a 24 karat gold polymer note that will not be returning to zero anytime soon, but will only appreciate in value when measured in Federal Reserve note terms. And then you have those that want to actually develop a strategy on how to hold the gold notes. And in my personal opinion, a possible alternative strategy for those that want to use as a liquid emergency fund is something to consider might be putting forth a little bit more effort to dollar cost average in, or take a small chunk of change and go in and actually buy you a bundle of these individual notes here, where you have an actual stack of 24 karat gold notes that you can keep in case of emergency situations, or depending on what area you're in, you can actually use these to spend right into the economy. Once again, just taking a minute to share some thoughts in reference to all the events unfolding and how the debt delirium has taken over society, and the unfortunate end of which will not be pretty, because there must come pain before we can get back to rebuilding this thing on sound, true monetary policies. And so a possible way to avoid that, of course, is to get your hands on things that cannot be printed out of thin air, which of course is sound money. Once again, taking a minute to share my 2 cents on things. If you guys found any value here, hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to take advantage of the opportunity to actually hold the most affordable gold and 24 karat gold notes, then I encourage you to visit buygoldnotes.com today and begin a journey of shielding yourself against the debt crisis that's already unfolding. But once again, that's just my 2 cents. Curious to hear yours. Drop a comment down below. I'll catch you guys later.